خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكن خيرا منهن ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه واتقوا الله إن الله تواب رحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. Of Surah Al-Hujurat, Quran chapter 49, verses 12, 13, and 14. O ye who believe, let not one people deride another people who may be better than they, nor let women deride other women who may be better than they. And defame not your own people, nor call one another by nicknames. Bad indeed is evil reputation after the profession of belief. and those who repent not are the wrongdoers. O ye who believe, avoid most of suspicions, for suspicion in some cases is a sin. And spy not, nor backbite one another. Would any of you like to eat the flesh of his brother who is dead? Certainly you loathe it. And fear Allah, surely Allah is oft returning with compassion and is merciful. O mankind, we have created you from male and female, and we have made you into tribes and sub-tribes that you may recognize one another. Verily, the most honorable among men, verily, the most honorable among you in the sight of Allah is he who is the most righteous among you. Surely, Allah is all-knowing, all-aware. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Hafiz Said Andam from Jamia Ahmadiyya International. I have the honor to introduce a few of our guests. Indeed, everyone here is a special guest, and take it that you have been duly introduced as special guests for this occasion. However, permit me to introduce those on the high table. To my immediate right is Nana Professor K.B. Asante. He is an eminent statesman and a traditional ruler, chief of Asokore in Asante. Nana, you are welcome. To his immediate right is His Excellency Sahnun Mukhtar. He's a Council of State member. Immediately following him is Baba F. Trawali, who is the Amir of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the Gambia. Then we have Reverend Father Innocent Joji, who is representing the awardee of the Ahmadiyya Peace Conference, the Peace Award. Then we have Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante, who is the chairman of the National Peace Council. Next to him is Al-Hajj Nur Muhammad bin Salih, who is the Amir and missionary in charge, Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission Ghana. We also have His Excellency Sir Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ayaz, who is the keynote speaker for this occasion. Next to him is Dr. Vladimir Enchidansu, who is the Dean of Academic Affairs, Armed Forces Command and Staff College. We also have Dr. Mustafa Hamid, who is the Minister of Inner Cities and Zongo Development. Next to him, we have Al-Hajj Sheikh Dr. Nuhu Osman Sargutu, who is the National Chief Imam. Then we have Dr. Mashoud A. Fashola, who is the Amir of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Nigeria. You are all welcome. We will proceed with the program, and at this juncture, I have the honor to invite the Amir and missionary in charge, Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission Ghana, to give us a welcome address.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The too many honorables and excellencies who are here this afternoon, my own father, the National Chief Imam, the Honorable Minister, Dr. Mustafa Hamid, Minister for Inner Cities and Zongo Development, Sir Iftikhar Ayaz, the emissary and representative of the Supreme Head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission worldwide here on this occasion, my own colleagues, amirs of 2 African countries, my elder, Nana, the Paramount Chief of Asokori, His Excellency Mr. Sahnoon Mokhtari, Member of the Council of State, and my own chairman, Most Reverend Father Dr. Professor Asante Enchi, the chairman and the great chairman of the National Peace Council of Ghana, and my other colleague members of the Peace Council of Ghana, and my colleagues of the Commission of Inquiry into the Creation of New Regions, distinguished servicemen and women, distinguished ambassadors, ministers of state, ministers of religion, and distinguished personalities of various walks of life in this country. I extend to all of you the Islamic felicitation of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May the peace, blessings, and mercy of the Almighty Allah be upon all of you. I humbly stand here to welcome each and every one of you with great gratitude to the Almighty Allah for having enabled you to accept our invitation to be here with us on this great occasion. And I believe each and every one of us will be proud in future to be mentioned as one of those who made this history, this great history which is about to make its debut today. The Supreme behalf of the National Executive Council of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community Ghana, and on behalf of the generality of Ahmadi Muslims in this country, and on behalf of my colleagues, the missionaries, the reverend fathers, sisters, mothers, what have you, ministers of religion who in this country have been doing the best that they can day and night to see to it that peace is established in this lovely country called Ghana. This peace conference is organized by the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission Ghana, but it is under the auspices of our supreme spiritual leader, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad Ayyadahullah Ta'ala bin Nasr al-Aziz. Indeed, this is not the first of its kind. Several earlier peace conferences, year in, year out, have been established by the community in UK, and particularly in London and other places. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community, as the name goes, is a Muslim community that believes in the fact that the fulfillment of the second coming of Jesus Christ, on whom be peace, and the fulfillment of the coming of the Imam Mahdi have both been fulfilled in the founder of this community. Just like John the Baptist, as the Bible tells us, was or came in the fulfillment of the prophecies about the second coming of the Elijah. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a revivalist Islamic group. It's not a new community. It is only a community within Muslim communities in the world, and the sole purpose and aim of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is to bring back Islam to its pristine purity and demonstrate, in conjunction with other Muslim leaders in this country and elsewhere throughout the world, that Islam, true and true to its name, means peace. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community has about more than 212 communities in various countries of the world. But this is the very first peace conference that we are holding on the soil of Africa, under the leadership of our supreme spiritual head, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, who has been a lone campaigner to the corridors of power in the world, to Capitol Hill, then to Germany, to the Houses of Parliament in Britain, writing letters to Iran, letters to Israel, letters to Germany, having conferences with service personnel of various European countries. What is it all about? Which is it's all about to see to the establishment of lasting peace in the world, because it has been his belief that no single individual or group of individuals can bring about peace in this world, particularly the extent to which we have gone in creating animosities and divisions among all of us. He believes strongly that it is in concert, that it is the coming together of all the powerful men and women of this country to a round table conference to talk peace that will see the lasting establishment of peace in the world. On this note, I want to welcome you once more to this epoch-making peace conference, and I'm proud to be part of it, and I'm proud to have been given the opportunity to welcome each and every one of you here. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you very much. On this note, also, I invite all brethren to join me in a silent prayer to open the conference. A silent prayer, please. Amen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, revered Amir Sahib. We now continue our proceedings, and we have a very short video about the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and then the Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Khush Hamdeed, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Bon Arrivé, you are welcome.
Nowadays, when the world again getting divided into blocks, extremism is escalating and the financial and economic situation is worsening. There is an urgent need to end all kinds of hatred and to lay the foundations of peace. This can only be done by respecting all kinds of sentiments of each other. If this is not done properly, honestly, and with virtue, it will escalate into uncontrollable circumstances.
You understand at a profound level that promoting religious freedom is an essential building block for peace and stability here and throughout the world. In this, we are allied with His Holiness, a courageous champion of religious freedom and of peace.
Allah ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu.
Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the most dynamic international community within Islam. The community was established by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad in Qadian, a small and remote village in India. He claimed to be the expected reformer of the latter days, the one awaited by all major world religions. Founded in 1889, the community has continued to spread throughout the world, flourishing under caliphate, the system of spiritual leadership established after the demise of the holy founder. The current successor of this movement, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, continues the work of the holy founder to revive the spiritual and moral state of mankind. The movement embodies the benevolent message of Islam in its pristine purity, a movement that preaches peace, universal brotherhood, and submission to the will of God.
The promised Messiah was sent to propagate the real and true teachings of Islam and the Holy Quran. He was sent to establish a bond between man and God Almighty. He was sent to identify and recognize the rights owed by man to one another. He was sent to end all forms of religious warfare. He was sent to establish the respect, dignity, and honor of every founder and every prophet of any religion. He was sent to draw attention towards attaining the highest standards of moral values. And he was sent to establish peace, love, compassion, and brotherhood throughout the world.
His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the present head of the community, continues in his effort to unite people from all faiths and cultures by promoting interfaith dialogue and religious freedom. He has traveled extensively to spread the message of peace and to remind everyone to respect the rights of other human beings. During these tours, His Holiness has met world leaders from the Far East to Europe, from North America to Africa, discussing the economic, social, and political problems facing the world today and how to create peace and justice in the world. He has also met religious and community leaders in order to share common values and core ideals universal to all religions and cultures, with a view to improving the moral state of mankind and creating an atmosphere of love and affection. From young to old, he compassionately alleviate poverty and human suffering. His concern is not just about the well-being and moral state of the members of the Ahmadiyya community, but of the great human suffering of mankind at large. The Ahmadiyya community knows only that Islam, which is the Islam of love and affection, offers a real message of peace and security.
I respect his strong commitment to promoting peace and understanding. At a time when extremists are seeking to divide us, His Holiness has delivered an inspiring and peaceful message of love, overcoming hatred.
Though of humble beginnings, your leadership has made you a figure of global prominence. You started as a teacher, and you have become a guide for millions of Muslims worldwide. You have been persecuted for your beliefs, jailed for your faith, and exiled from your homeland, but you refuse to turn to bitterness or vengeance, and that is a very important lesson.
So again, what a pleasure it is to welcome you, Your Holiness, to Ottawa, an opportunity to discuss the many challenges facing the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, but also the opportunities that we have to work together on shared goals and challenges.
When I was here, I did not think of abandoning this country. I considered myself to be a Ghanaian.
Together, we should fight common enemies such as illiteracy, disease, hunger, and poverty. The Ahmadiyya mission has put structures in place towards the fight against these common enemies in order to enhance the dignity of man.
The Ahmadiyya mission is one religious organization in Ghana which has demonstrated ample tolerance in terms of its preparedness to cooperate with all other religious bodies, Muslim and Christian alike.
An injunction to love all and to hate none is the avowed guiding principle of the Ahmadi life.
The Ahmadiyya community, the mission in Sierra Leone, really they've made a pivotal contribution to the education in our country. You just have to look around wherever you are.
What would the world have been without Ahmadiyya movement? As far as Islam is concerned, it would have left a big, big gap, a vacuum incalculable for us to even suggest as to the type of impact it would mean on society.
Thank you very much for watching that video. Our beloved Imam, as you have seen him, thank you. Despite his very busy schedule, still managed to send a message because of his love for the African continent. And I humbly request the Amir and missionary in charge of Ghana to read out his message to the audience. Thank you.
A message to Ahmadiyya Muslim Peace Conference in Ghana. Distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. I am very pleased to learn that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is holding a peace conference on such a large scale for the first time. I pray that the Almighty blesses this important event in all aspects, and I hope that all of the participants come to recognize that establishing peace in the world is the single greatest challenge facing mankind. Through new technologies and modern forms of transportation, the world has become like a global village. No longer are nations detached from one another. Rather, we are living in an increasingly interconnected, globalized world, where this has led to advancement and progress in many spheres, and has enabled people living thousands of miles apart to be instantly connected. It has also led to harmful developments that have established the world and caused for world peace to steadily deteriorate in recent times. We have seen tensions between different groups and communities within nations rising, and the increased polarization of society. This has even led to violence and bloody civil wars in some countries. In the West, the far right has resurfaced, and its dangerous resurgence shows no sign of abating. Similarly, at an international level, hostilities are intensifying and threaten to boil over at any time. The major powers of the world are making moves to build and strengthen alliances with the intention of boosting their own power and might in front of the world. Those blocs that were a feature of the 20th century are now being re-established before our eyes. It is no exaggeration to say that with each day that passes, the risk to civilization are increasing. Weapons are being manufactured and stockpiled at an alarming rate, and unquestionably, due to new technologies, today's weapons are far deadlier and sophisticated than ever before. Major powers are taking advantage of their alliances to hoard weapons as they seek to ensure that their arsenals are mightier than their rivals. In this effort, less powerful allies are helping them fulfill their interests in order to gain their favor. As a result, the world stands in great peril, and there is no doubt that the weapons that exist have the potential to destroy humanity many times over, and so with each person we are moving ever closer to the abyss. Moreover, the collateral damage that is seen in war-torn countries is causing death and misery beyond comprehension and is a grave stain on humanity. The infrastructure in those nations where airstrikes and heavy bombardment have occurred has been destroyed. The aggressors compound the misery and maximize casualties by selling bodies and preventing necessary aid from reaching people in desperate need. Hence, where people are dying directly from bomb attacks and warfare, millions of others, including babies and young children, women and elders, are dying from famine, malnutrition, and disease. They are denied basic essentials or medication and are withering away and dying, whilst the world stands by silently. This is all happening today in this era on our watch. Hence, in light of the perilous state of the world, it is the urgent need of the time that people and nations set aside their vested interests and focus all their energies upon establishing peace through justice, compassion, and mutual respect. A spirit of selflessness and a genuine desire to alleviate the suffering of others must overcome the selfish greed that has taken root in so much of the world. Regrettably, it cannot be denied that certain Muslims or Muslim countries have been directly involved in undermining the peace of the world. Consequently, ammunition has been provided to those who allege that Islam is a religion of violence and an extremist ideology. Nevertheless, Islam's teachings are the polar opposite of what is being portrayed in the media or by those so-called Muslims who seek to fulfill their own interests, by perpetrating barbaric and heinous crimes. The truth is that Islam teaches kindness, compassion, justice, and fulfilling the needs of all members of society, irrespective of creed, caste, or color. It condemns and prohibits all forms of terrorism, extremism, or violence. The very first words of the Holy Quran are, "In the name of Allah, the most gracious, ever merciful." And thereafter it stated that Allah, the Almighty, is the Lord of all the worlds, meaning He is the sustainer and provider for all mankind. He provides and nourishes Christians, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, pagans, and the people of all beliefs. Allah, the Almighty, provides for and sustains even those who even deny His existence. Furthermore, the Holy Quran has declared the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to be a source of mercy and compassion for all of mankind. Thus, when Allah Almighty is the provider for all people, of all races and of all beliefs, and the Prophet of Islam, peace and blessings be upon him, was sent as a fountain of mercy and love for humanity, it is inconceivable that Islam's teachings are merciless, extreme, and bloodthirsty. Those who allege that Islam promotes violence or extremism are entirely wrong and misguided. Those who allege that Islam promotes violence or extremism are entirely wrong and misguided. The Holy Quran has categorically declared that any form of compulsion in faith or belief is not permitted and is opposed to everything that Islam stands for. Belief is solely a matter of the heart. Any wars fought by the Muslims in the time of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, were purely defensive wars fought as a final and last resort after all other means to stop the cruelties of the oppressors had been tried. Even then, the Holy Quran and the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, imposed extremely strict rules of engagement on the Muslims. For example, the Holy Quran instructed that during warfare, if at any point the aggressor made any moves towards peace or reconciliation, it ought to be accepted. No opportunity for peace, no matter how remote, was ever to be spent. Additionally, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam strictly instructed his followers that during wars, they were not allowed to target women. They were not allowed to target women or children or the elderly or the infirm. They were not allowed to attack places of worship or religious figures such as priests or rabbis. Yet today in the modern world, we are seeing so much ethics or respect for human life in the wars that are taking place. As mentioned, children, women, and other vulnerable people are routinely targeted, and the levels of cruelty and brutality are beyond the imagination. Tragically, certain Muslims and Muslim countries are also involved in such horrific cruelties, but at the same time, it should be crystal clear that their conduct is completely against the noble teachings of the Holy Quran and the Prophet of Islam, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. As I have said, now is the time to put aside our differences. Now is the time to put aside our differences, and for all people, whether religious or not, whether rich or poor, to come together, recognize the fact that we are all part of the same human race, and united as such. We must promote peace through justice and love at every level of society, and each individual has a significant role to play. It is to serve this purpose that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community hosts peace symposiums throughout the world, and each year we hold a similar event on an even larger scale in London. At all our symposiums, we seek to break down the barriers that divide mankind and to provide solutions to the ills of the world. We use such opportunities to prove the fact that Islam is a religion of peace and a religion that motivates true Muslims to engage in dialogue with others, to exhibit tolerance, and to serve humanity. We present our ideas of how to develop peace and listen to the respective ideas and views of representatives of other communities. From an Islamic perspective, we urge governments and the world leaders to act with justice and argue that instead of developing opposing blocs and profiteering through the arms trade, nations should show regard for one another and fulfill each other's rights. We appeal to them to look at the long-term future of the world rather than to be blinded by short-termism and narrow self-interest. As stated earlier, the weapons of today are far deadlier than at any time in our history. Several countries have acquired nuclear weapons that have the potential to wipe away nations at the push of a button. If, God forbid, such arsenals are ever put to use, the catastrophic effects will last for generations and will result in children being born with mental and physical disabilities for many decades to come. Even those countries who do not possess nuclear weapons have acquired such destructive weaponry that can easily kill millions of people and leave behind a lasting trail of destruction. Is this the legacy we wish to leave behind for our children and future generations? Do we desire that they weep at the horrors we have left behind for them? Is it our hope that, instead of remembering us with love and respect, they look back at us with hate and contempt? Do we want the coming generations to curse and scorn us? I reiterate that we must now focus on the peace and prosperity of the world. And in light of this, I'm pleased that African countries have not joined the ranks of those nations who are involved in the world's nuclear arms race. It is my belief that if the rest of the world continues to act unjustly, usurping the rights of others and interfering in other nations, they will ultimately destroy themselves. If and when that day comes, I believe that Africa may be the only continent. I believe that Africa may be the only continent that will have saved itself from annihilation. Moreover, where today Africa is looked down upon by many, and considered to be weak, your continent will be in a position to play a pivotal role in rebuilding the rest of the world. Thus, never underestimate yourselves or the potential of your nations. Rather, the African countries should ensure that they are ready to one day take on the mantle of leading the world. For this, you must ensure you do not become consumed by the evils that have plagued other nations. You will have to act with justice, forego all forms of corruption, and serve your nations with integrity and work towards their continued development and advancement. I hope and pray that the African nations resist the worldly temptations to join existing international blocs or alliances that are based on greed and injustice. Instead, I urge you to make your own bloc, and that should be an alliance of peace. Set a positive example for the rest of the world by establishing the highest standards of justice. May the alliance of peace come to spread not only in Africa, but prevail in all parts of the world. At the end, I pray for the success of the peace conference, and I extend my best wishes to all of the participants. With all my heart, I pray that the dark clouds of war and grief, that hover threateningly over the world today are soon replaced by bright blue sky of love and peace. Amen. Wassalam. Yours sincerely, signed Mirza Masroor Ahmad, Khalifatul Masih, the fifth head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And I'm done. And thank you very much for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
And with that very insightful speech from our beloved spiritual leader, we are now ready to take brief statements from some of our guests. And we shall begin with the Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante. Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante is the chairman of the National Peace Council of Ghana and also the former presiding bishop of the Methodist Church, Ghana. Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante is an ardent advocate for peace. His vision of peaceful nation is built on core democratic values and characterized by his commitment to ensuring that Ghana is a model of a peaceful nation in Africa, where people can engage in their lawful activities, confident that the institutions, mechanisms, and capacities for mediating differences and grievances are effective and responsive. Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante has articulated his vision of peace for Ghana on different platforms in Ghana and international circles. He is an ardent advocate of social justice, inclusiveness, tolerance, dialogue, and consensus building. I have the honor to invite Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante to give us a statement.
Your Excellency, Honorable Minister, Nananum distinguished personalities invited to this august conference, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my profound appreciation to the leadership and the entire membership of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Ghana and international communities for inviting me, in particular in the National Peace Council Governing Board as a whole, to be part of this important conference. I'm particularly grateful for the opportunity to share some brief thoughts on the theme Peace and Global Justice. The quest for peace is essential for any human development. It is indeed the bedrock for social cohesion, inclusiveness, and tolerance, which are required for the total well-being of humankind. Peacefulness, however, cannot be attained in a vacuum. It must be built on the solid foundation of justice, here understood as fidelity to the demands of human relationship. Justice finds concrete expression in the maintenance of human rights and respect for human dignity. It is for this reason that I personally think that the theme of this conference is not only appropriate, but timely. Indeed, any social, religious, and political arrangement meant for the well-being of the individual and society as a whole must stand on the two legs of peace and justice. The nexus between peace and justice makes it imperative for all, especially religious organizations, not to placate themselves, not to placate individuals who have suffered injustice with the expression "Former Nyame, leave it to God," associated with Ghanaians. We should insist that justice must not only seem to be done, but actually done for all categories of persons: Muslims, Christians, traditional believers, literates, illiterates, children, women, and the physically and mentally disabled, whose human rights have been infringed on. The point is, where injustice prevails, peace is non-existent. Injustice prevails where government and their representatives do not ensure equity in the distribution of the proverbial national cake and development. But it also prevails where perpetrators of human rights abuse are left unpunished for their wrongdoing because of their socio-political connection. The failure of the state to punish perpetrators of human rights abuses breeds the culture of impunity and creates space for violence, which has the potential to affect the peacefulness of any country. In the 2018 Global Peace Index, the Sydney-based Institute for Economics and Peace assessed 163 independent states and territories across the world with the following key findings. 1, the average level of global peacefulness has declined for the 4th consecutive year, falling by 0.27% in 2017. The Middle East and North Africa, the MENA region, remain the world's least peaceful region. 4 of the 10 least peaceful countries in the world are located in that part of the world. The irony is that the MENA region happens to be the cradle of the great religions of the world. A very significant question we need to raise concerns the role religion plays in the peace and development of the nations. It is a fact that we have freedom of religious expression. It is also a fact that secularization has not led to the disappearance of religion. Religion still has great socio-political influence. Religion is still growing in leaps and bounds, especially in 2/3 of the world. Religion, in that sense, bears a great responsibility for peace, cohesion, and development of our societies. One says this because all religions are theoretically committed to peace and aims at the development of the human and his or her community. Rana Etishan Rabbani observes in his musings on pathways to peace as follows: none of the religions in the world has preached the teachings of hating a human being. One who detests another man due to his religion, sect, race, region, and profession, or for other reasons, is included in those who negate even their own religion. All religions propagate the message of peace, tranquility, and love with each other. Yet, all too often, it appears that religion has the tendency to exacerbate conflict instead of helping to resolve it and promote the peace and reconciliation that ostensibly seem to be religious avowed aspiration. Religion's avowed aspiration. One must admit that in most cases, the so-called religious conflicts are hardly religious-driven. It is the case that people have exploited religion for their ethnic, political, nationalist, and territorial conflicts. This, however, still begs the question as to why religion is so malleable to exploitation for violent ends. What is it in religion that makes it susceptible to be exploited for violent purposes? A strong tendency, it has been said, to display hostility toward different religious positions is connected with a strong tendency towards xenophobia and ethnocentrism. In respect of peace, I would like to adopt the Wikipedia's definition as a working definition for what I'm saying. A state of harmony characterized by the lack of violent conflict, behavior, and the freedom from fear of violence. Commonly understood as the absence of hostility, peace also suggests the existence of healthy or newly healed interpersonal relationship, prosperity in matters of social or economic welfare, and establishment of equality, and a working political order that serves the true interests of all. At the heart of peace, so understood, is justice, which in this context is fidelity to the demands of relationships, or that which defines and informs harmonious relationship. It is important for us to understand that peace is hardly the absence of conflict. Indeed, understood as a situation of incompatibility in which the parties are aware of the incompatibility of potential future positions and in which each party wishes to occupy a position that is incompatible with the wishes of the other, conflicts become unavoidable and sometimes necessary byproduct of the dynamics of any society. Conflict so defined clearly indicates that peace bespeaks the management of conflict to the extent that it does not develop into violent clash. Violent conflict, which is the absence of peace, presupposes failure in the management of the inevitable conflict in a pluralistic society. The other thing that came out of the report is that the global economic impact of violence was $14.76 trillion in 2017, an equivalent of 12.4% of global GDP. That is, if you were to calculate what violence has done in terms of dollar terms, it will be $14.76 trillion. The 3 countries from Africa were among the 5 least peaceful countries in the world, namely South Sudan, Somalia, and Central African Republic. And the 3 most peaceful countries are from Europe, namely Iceland, Norway, and Denmark. Ghana has been doing well on the Global Peace Index. In 2018 report, for example, the country made significant gains of 6 points to rank 41st in the world and 5th in the sub-Saharan Africa, after Mauritius, Botswana, Sierra Leone, and Madagascar. What we need to do in order for the world and its people to enjoy peace and realize the goal 16 of the Sustainable Development Goals that emphasizes on peace, justice, and strong institutions, states must do all they could in sincerity to remove obstacles of injustice that militate against peacefulness. I would urge religious and traditional leaders to lead a fight against injustice that threatens the peace of the world by not only preaching against it, but more importantly, by showing leadership and standing up against actions and inactions by either government or sections within the country that has the potential of disturbing our peace. Religion stands for peace, and we must do all we can to promote peace as we practice our religion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante. We would now call Dr. Vladimir Inchidanso, who is a highly experienced researcher and a consultant to many international organizations in the fields of regional economic cooperations and integration, as well as international finance and trade. He has authored several conference papers, monographs, and articles in scholarly journals. He was for many years a lecturer at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, where he taught graduate courses in regional integration, trade, and international finance. He has recently been appointed the Dean of Academic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, where he teaches graduate courses on terrorism and counter-terrorism. Dr. Inchidanso has also served, or still serves, as a resource person for courses on regional integration. We are grateful to have him here, and I respectfully invite Dr. Inchidanso to give us a statement.
Thank you very much. I think I would like to just stand on the protocol already established by my predecessor speakers to acknowledge the presence of all those on the high table and Your Excellencies, distinguished persons also down here, and to express gratitude like my big brother has expressed to the mission for inviting me to this very important gathering. Two things I would like to preamble my short intervention with. The first one is an anecdote or a joke, which is true anyway. When we were in the training college, I have no classmate in any secondary school. I went to the teacher training college. We had a young man, an Ahmadi young student, who always would do everything possible to attend the Ahmadi conferences. That was a local conference, and he would do everything, tell whatever lies it would take for him to get a visa to attend. Now, when he returns, we teased him and we asked him, what the hell is there in the conference? And he shared very good jokes. He would say, it is at the conference that the angels of God come to make choices, pick the people for heaven. So young as I was, I took it serious. I thought at every conference, the angels of God come around. So maybe I'm blessed today to be at this conference. Who knows? One angel may pick me. The second is, normally I'm not comfortable when I'm introduced and the audience is told I teach terrorism. I was introduced in Canada, Queensland University. What the white man fears is the word terrorism. And I'm introduced as a professor. When you say professor, you say professor of a certain discipline. So as I was introduced as a professor of terrorism, I could sense the feeling of the audience. So I had to debunk that and let them know in the preamble that I teach something about terrorists and terrorism. I don't teach terrorism. Thank you very much. Questions of peace, justice, stability, and progress are questions that are very difficult to unravel, especially where policy is concerned. The Most Reverend told us Ghana is doing well in the Peace Index. Yes, we are doing well. But the ingredients for chaos are always present when you are doing well. The way I teach, I always scare my students on the first day. And I know I see some of them over here. Some of them even in uniform. You can't believe that I scare the soldiers. And I do that to let you know that what is coming ahead is more difficult. So brace yourself for the wind. And I'm going to do the same today with my short intervention, just 10 minutes. And I pick a small note I found in the special message to start it all. And I quote, "It is no exaggeration to say that with each day that passes, the risks to civilization are increasing." That's very true. And you would realize that the risks in the world are real. 2017, the Most Reverend talked about maybe the governance systems in various countries and those things that make for peace or for instability. I'll talk about the international systemic order because that is the genesis of the whole thing. It is that order that gives you the policy space to say A or B, to do A or B. Even policies about how you govern in terms of democracy, how you govern in terms of prudence in economic governance and things like that. So the international system is the most guilty of all the problems we are having in this world. Last year, 2017, statistics have it that $14.3 trillion was spent on wars and peace. I wouldn't put it that way. As a researcher, I would say $14.3 trillion was spent looking for peace and justice. And that is about twice and more of the American economy. 2 times the size of the American economy was used looking for peace in the world. Now ask yourself, how did it come about? It came about because throughout history, at every tipping point, for solutions to peace. So all the treaties we have had in the past, in 1648, we had one of the first treaties to create the Westphalian system, that is the order that we have now, Ghana, Togo, whatever it is, came from the 1648 order. Then on and on and on, the First World War came, and the Wilsonian 14 principles created a condition for the League of Nations. All these things, we trying to build a system of live and let live. But the Americans walked out of the League, even though they sponsored it. Then came the First World War, the Second World War. Again, we created the United Nations system to make it possible for the system to bring peace. If you look at the preamble of the UN Charter, so that succeeding generations does not suffer the scourge of war. So we created all these systems. But the various nations that created the system are the very nations which are undermining the system. So Trump tells you, I don't like globalism. I like patriotism. UN, if you like, get away from here. UNESCO, I won't give you money. So what we are experiencing in the world is a kind of geopolitical lenses creating chaos where they would want to create chaos away from themselves. So the international systemic order is sick, and we need to look at how we can make it work. I don't have a solution, but it is time that the big powers started behaving, because it is their misbehavior. For example, all that we are seeing about terrorism, which they call it Islamic jihadism, is because somebody stirred the hornet's nest. Iraq was the beginning of global terrorism. And let me tell you, the 21st century is going to be a century of terrorism. Samuel Huntington has said that it is a clash of civilizations. We agree. If you bring your system and you say, plant it, maybe I'm going to stir some nerves. For example, when Cameron told us that if you don't add gay laws into your whatever it is, we won't give you any loans or whatever. Excuse me, it doesn't make sense. What you're doing is that you are creating a certain clash of civilizations. So going to Iraq to so-called democratize Iraq, regime change, means that you are creating a vacuum, and it's in that vacuum that ISIS was born. So ISIS was a creation of America and the West, and we are all suffering from it. And they say Islamic jihadism. Islam, by definition, is peace. So it is not Islam which is creating anything, but those who think Islam is a tool. And if you ask the soldiers, all tools in the toolbox are used when you are at war. So those who want to fight the West and their civilization are also trying to use Islam to fight. It doesn't mean it is Islam. In conclusion, what I would say is that the way forward lies in international normative ethic, in which what is good for the goose is good for the gander, brewed in their own local and socio-historical relativities. So if gayism is a priority in America, maybe food is what is a priority for Ghana. Then we should all now have to lay emphasis on human security, because in human security, if I have my food, my security is assured, I have schools, hospitals, housing, all those human needs, I'm assured in Ghana, 27-30 million. Cote d'Ivoire, they are assured of this. The aggregation of human security in all countries is the aggregation of peace in the world. So we must emphasize human security. Then we must help the global institutions to be independent. At times we just tell the United Nations what to do and they do it. It's not correct. Civil society activism is very, very important. Inclusive and participatory governance is what is called democracy, not just the basic tenets of American democracy implanted in one country and we say democracy. And then we need to promote sustainable peace-building education through innovative approaches to transforming the world. You know, we don't teach peace education in our schools. We rather go and recruit them to vigilantes. That is not good enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Inchidansun, for your brief statement. We will now take Honorable Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, who is the Minister for Inner Cities and Zongo Development. He's an Islamic scholar and a senior lecturer who, until his appointment as minister in 2017, taught in the Department of Religion and Human Values at the University of Cape Coast. Dr. Abdul Hamid also worked in various capacities in the media, advertising, and marketing, where he has been an editor of the highest journal and Choice FM. He was the strategy planning manager for Media Magic and Research System and client service manager at the Ghana Advertising and Marketing. He is an astute politician who served as the national youth leader of the New Patriotic Party from 2012 to 2005. Honorable Dr. Mustafa, we have the honor to invite you to give us a statement.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, Master of the Day of Judgment. You alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. Guide us onto the straight path, the path of those on whom you have bestowed your favor, not of those who go astray, nor of those who earn your anger. I greet you all in the greetings of Islam, saying, Assalamu alaikum. Maulvi Muhammad bin Sali, the National Chief Imam, Your Eminence Sheikh Osman Nuhu Sharubutu, Your Excellency Sahnun Mukhtar, and as they say in Ghana, all other protocols are duly observed. I am very grateful for the opportunity to say a few words in solidarity with the Ahmadiyya movement worldwide and of course the Ahmadiyya movement in Ghana on the occasion of this International Peace Conference. I am ever grateful to the Ahmadiyya movement for these invitations. In this year, I think this was in about April, May or June, at the instance of Maulvi Muhammad bin Sali, I was in the UK for the International Peace Conference as well. So today, what I shall say in brief is that as believers, and I'm sure the majority of us here, or indeed everybody here, is either Muslim or Christian or a traditional believer. Whatever our belief systems are, there is a famous Sufi scholar called Cheno Boka. To quote, he says, and I quote, "The rainbow owes its beauty to the variety of its shades and colors. In the same voices of various believers that rise up from all parts of the earth as a symphony of praises addressing God," unquote. Ibn Arabi also says that the light is one, but the lamps are many. In my opinion, that is a very succinct explanation of the diversity of human belief. Because the Almighty Allah says in the Quran that if He wished, He would have made all mankind one community. Which means that differences of humanity is an inherent part . No, it was the Reverend, Chairman of the National Peace Council, who was asking, why is it that religion is often used for violent purposes? My answer is because religion is ambivalent. It is a double-edged sword. Identity is ambivalent. Identity can be a sense, or if you want, a rallying point for love, for affection, and for consideration. At the same time, identity can be a subject of division, war, chaos, and confusion. There's a scholar called Amartya Sen who explains it in the context of the Rwandan genocide and says that if we say that we are Rwandans, then there is love, there is compassion. But immediately we begin to say, I am Tutsi and you are Hutu. It can engender a sense of exclusion that immediately says, because I am Tutsi, I hate Hutus. Or, because I am Hutu, I should hate Tutsis. So there are various identities and divisions that we can appropriate either for good or for evil. Right now, we are all gathered in this room in the name of our humanity. Nobody sees on our faces what religious persuasion or what ethnic group that we belong to. But if we choose, right here, we can call up those differences and segregate this room on the basis of those identities. And that immediately can, as the street boy will say, scatter this congregation. And so, as believers, I want us to reflect that when we are Christians and we say to one another, Shalom, and we are Muslims and we say to one another every day, Assalamu alaikum, what does it mean? In the Quran, there are two beautiful stories of a prophet called Moses or Musa and another gentleman that the Muslims call Karun, that the Old Testament calls Korah. The Quran says when Korah was evil and Moses sought to bring him to order and he refused and he turned to God, God said to Moses, I have empowered you, do as you please. And Moses caused the earth to swallow Korah. As the earth swallowed Korah or Karun, he began to call out to Moses for forgiveness. Moses didn't forgive him, allowed the earth to swallow him and all his riches. Now Moses turns to God for vindication. Rather, God chastises Moses and says, Korah called to you 70 times for forgiveness. You failed to forgive him. If he had called me, Allah, once, I would have forgiven him. Once. So, what this tells us is that as humans, forgiveness is mandatory. The Christians say, forgive us as our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. When Moses returned from the mountains, according to the Quran and the Bible, after 40 days of absence and found the Israelites worshipping the calf, he chastised his brother Aaron, Harun, and said, why do you allow them to worship the calf? And he said, if I had forbidden them from worshipping the calf, I would have divided the ummah. Because some would have listened to me and some would have refused. So I allowed them to worship the calf in unity. So we maintain the unity of the woman. Now tell them it is forbidden. They will leave it in unity. Ladies and gentlemen, Maulvi bin Sali, you see I mentioned Maulvi Wahab, may his soul rest in peace. This shows that, inshallah, he's in Al-Jannah, because we are talking peace, and his name comes up. I cannot go and sit down without saying something in my capacity as a minister of state, responsible for inner cities and Zongo development. And we know that inner cities are the places of social exclusion, of marginalization, of backwardness, and all of those things. As the Reverend said, peace is not merely the absence of war. Socio-economic prosperity is an indicator of peace. And therefore, we want to give our commitment to you as a government that we shall do everything in our part to bring about the social and economic transformation that is necessary for bringing about total peace and transformation of our country. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Honorable Mustafa Abdul Hamid. We now move to the award presentation. Islam focuses on securing peace in every sphere of human activity. It aims to promote education, respect, and tolerance, improve social and interfaith harmony, support charitable causes, and serve humanity regardless of race, creed, and color. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is dedicated to establish peace at all levels and to protect basic human rights of all. In light of this, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Africa Prize for the Advancement of Peace is therefore awarded in recognition of an individual or an organization's contribution for the advancement of the cause of peace. The Global Peace Award was launched at the 2009 UK Jalsa Salana, the annual convention, by His Holiness Hazrat Mr. Masroor Ahmed, the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community worldwide. The award comprised a trophy together with a certificate and a monetary prize. This historic prize will be the first one awarded in Africa, and the award goes to Dr. John Cardinal Olorunfemi Oneiken of Nigeria. Dr. John Cardinal Olorunfemi Oneiken is a distinguished Nigerian priest of the Catholic Church, a peace negotiator, founder of the Cardinal Oneiken Foundation for Peace, an NGO in Nigeria. He holds a PhD degree in divinity and became the Archbishop of Abuja in 1994. In the year 2000, he became the president of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria and is the former president of the Christian Association of Nigeria. Dr. Cardinal Oneiken, polyglot, is a co-chairman of Nigeria Interfaith Religious Council, a government and religious body for the interreligious dialogue, which is especially charged with the responsibility of finding permanent solution to the Boko Haram insurgents in the northeast of Nigeria. He strives to settle religious and communal differences through dialogue and meetings between the parties involved. On several occasions, Cardinal Oneiken, apologies for the pronunciation, has raised the issue with the Nigerian government to show more commitment in addressing issues of social justice in order to advance lasting peace in the country. Lately, Dr. Oneiken instituted a fellowship program on the interreligious dialogue where 36 fellows, including 16 Muslim leaders and youth, were trained in the art of conflict resolution. Doctor has been recognized for his work and received awards including Pax Christi International Peace Laureate in 2012, and a Peace Award from the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, Nigeria, 2017. We will now show a short
Cardinal John Olorunfemi Onoyekan is currently the Metropolitan Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, Nigeria, the co-chair African Council of Religious Leaders, the Christian Moderator World Conference of Religions for Peace, and a member of the World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council on the Role of Faith. In the past 4 decades, Cardinal Onoyekan has become a historic reference point in matters of intra- and interreligious dialogue and leadership. His professionalism in this field is regularly sought after, both locally and internationally, and this has earned him recognitions and many esteemed awards and laurels. He has toured around the world, delivering lectures at prestigious institutions, as well as high-level conferences on global justice, peace, and human development. To keep the legacies of this peace lover alive, Cardinal Onoyekan Foundation for Peace was established in the year 2010. Cardinal Onoyekan Foundation for Peace is a non-governmental organization with the mandate to provide a platform for building and strengthening the processes of peace and social change in Nigeria and Africa at large. The goal of the foundation is to build mutual respect, prevent and resolve conflicts, and enhance cooperation among adherents of different faiths and cultures.
I have learned to discover that while Islam and Christianity are quite different, and the differences are not negligible, nevertheless, we have such a wide range of common grounds upon which we can quite honestly and effectively build common action. And this is the priority I have personally accepted for myself.
Cardinal Onoyekan has contributed immensely to the Boko Haram discourse and is one of the few whose opinions in this regard are cherished. In 2012, he was a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize. Cardinal Onoyekan is a peace builder and a participant in several peace initiatives.
Thank you for the short video. Due to the national assignment of the Interreligious Council of Abuja, Dr. Cardinal Onoyekan could not be at this event to receive his Peace Award in person, but his representative, Reverend Father Innocent Joji, traveled from Abuja this morning to join us to receive the award on his behalf. May I now have the singular honor, and on behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, request Reverend Father Innocent Joji to receive the Peace Award on behalf of Dr. John Cardinal Olorunfemi Onoyekan, and the award will be presented by the Amir and Missionary in Charge of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Ghana, Morvin Mohammed bin Salih.
This one first.
Yes, please. Make sure you come out. Yeah.
Barakallahu lakum. Barakallahu lakum.
That concludes the presentation. I now request Reverend Father to say some few words. Thank you.
I'm very careful not to follow the protocol because they may give me yellow card and red card. So let me say that this is a distinguished assembly of lovers, promoters of peace worldwide. And we thank God for this honor done to our Chief Shepherd, His Eminence John Cardinal Onaiyekan. Let me start this speech by formally appreciating the Ahmadiyya Muslim community worldwide, and most importantly, Africa, for the wonderful work you are doing in the area of interfaith mediation, peace building, tolerance, peaceful coexistence. Your enviable output speaks volumes to your hard work, strength of character, and tenacity of purpose. As it is well known today, our world is seriously challenged from all quarters: political and civil conflicts, communal conflicts, religious and ideological conflicts. With colossal consequences, communities have been uprooted and displaced, many have been killed, maimed, and thousands have become internally displaced persons, and refugees living in makeshift camps within and without. This has led to food insecurity, shelter challenges, school children dropping out of school, no access to primary health, infant and maternal mortality, and the general underdevelopment in the global south. Indeed, it has become a Herculean task meeting the sustainable development goals, as was the case with the Millennium Development Goals. Africa, as we know, weeps under a burden of protracted violent conflicts. It is within this background that the efforts of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in interfaith mediation and peace building generally should be properly situated and commended. You have really done well in working towards societal peace. You have continued to bring hope in the midst of the hopelessness. You have continued to preach a work for peace in the midst of the surrounding conflicts. You have continued to show courage, determination, and doggedness in the pursuit of peace, just as the Christian scripture enjoins the Christian faithful to pursue peace with men and women of goodwill. Religions in Africa have continued to keep a prophetic voice that curbs conflict. Action for justice results in peace. The main religions in Africa, Christianity, Islam, African traditional religion, must be seen to champion this cause. It was late but now St. John Paul II, he said, "We cannot fail to remember the countless men and women who have contributed to the affirmation and the solemn proclamation of human rights and have helped to defeat the various forms of totalitarianism, to put an end to colonialism, to develop democracy, and to establish a great international organizations. Those who built their lives on the value of nonviolence have given us a luminous and prophetic example, the example of integrity and loyalty, often to the point of martyrdom, has provided us with rich, splendid lessons. A major focus of interfaith is the promotion of interfaith cooperation to end religious-motivated violence and to create cultures of peace, justice, and healing. This rests on the respect
of various religious traditions. I'm indeed grateful that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is in furtherance of its work on peace will confer this award on my humble self in recognition for the humble contributions I have made alongside with the foundation to the issues of peace in Nigeria, in Africa, and beyond. It is an honor for which I am profoundly appreciative, for in the words of Cicero, gratitude is others. First, I'm grateful. My sincere appreciation to the community. It is gratifying to realize that my work is being appreciated by a reputable organization like the Ahmadiyya. This is an impetus and drive to do more. The Lord will surely help us. Finally, we must realize that peace is a divine construction. Certainly, war is a human construction and it is unacceptable. The benefit of consolidation, the interfaith relationship is based on dialogue for peace and cannot be denied. It is necessary for religious leaders to pursue interreligious initiatives so as to address the teething problems that work against peace. Interreligious relations can lessen conflict that arises from both religious-related issues and the factors external to religion. We must say no to war in Africa and the world at large and embrace peace. Thank you, Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and thank you for this award given to His Eminence that I represent. I'm a teacher, a lecturer myself. I'm the director of Peace and Development. So when they started these exciting discussions, I wish it were at a different forum. But thank you. I brought you best wishes of His Eminence, the best good wishes of the good people of Nigeria, and thank you very much for this honor. God bless you.
Thank you, and thank you very much. At this juncture, I would wish to express my gratitude to all of you for your patience, and just to inform you that we are at the very last item of the program, and that is to invite our keynote speaker to give us his address. Our keynote speaker is His Excellency Sir Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ayaz. He was brought up in Tanzania and received his university education in the United Kingdom and the United States of America. He has a master's degree in applied linguistics and PhD in human development. He has worked in senior positions with the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, the Center for Integrated Rural Development for Africa, the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperations. He has worked with UNDP and UNESCO. Our keynote speaker has been serving on the United Nations Human Rights Council Committee and Committee for the Rights of Minorities. His Excellency Dr. Ayaz presently is the chairman of the International Human Rights Committee. He's also the High Commissioner Designate for the Tuvalu Islands and the director of the World Media Forum International, and then also is an ambassador of peace and a consultant for human development, poverty alleviation, and conflict resolution. Sir Iftikhar is the recipient of several honors, including the Role Model of the Year 2016. He has been awarded the OBE, that is the Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, and KBE, that is the Knight Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, which speaks volumes of his services to humanity. Sir Dr. Ahmed Ayaz is an eminent member of the worldwide Ahmadiyya Muslim community and has occupied various capacities and has been the national president of the community's branch in the United Kingdom. He is a prolific writer, having published several books. He has spoken on a number of high-profile peace symposiums in several countries of the world. I have the singular honor to invite His Excellency, Sir Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ayaz, to present his keynote address.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The Arabic invocation that I have just recited is the testimony of my faith and belief, which is, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. He is one, and I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the messenger of Allah. My most revered, honorable National President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, Ghana, and my most revered National Presidents of the Ahmadiyya Muslim communities who have come from several other African countries, and they are here for this peace symposium. Excellencies, Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace and blessings and mercy of God be upon you. It is indeed an immense honor for me to address this August Peace Symposium. I consider myself most fortunate that God enabled me to participate in this landmark event organized by a peaceable community and attended by a galaxy of noble citizens of this eminent nation of Ghana and hosted on the great continent of Africa. This symposium is immensely blessed that the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, Allah be his helper, has sent a keynote, very special, far-reaching, thought-provoking message that was read out to us earlier by the Honorable National President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, Ghana, to ensure that Africa becomes the leading beacon of justice and peace, not only in this continent, but the entire world. Symposiums like this afford us the opportunity to reflect how well we have used the blessings of our freedom, liberty,
and universality to eradicate the poverty that afflicts the mass of people, to take stock of how far we have to go towards the realization of social and economic justice for all, and to evaluate if new and novel responses are required of us in this quest. I must very, very deeply appreciate the eloquent addresses which we have just heard this afternoon and which have enlightened us on these very, very important issues. We are assembled here to answer but one question: how can humanity attain peace and justice for all? If this question sounds too trite in its simplicity and too familiar in its rhyme, it is because this is a challenge that has been with us here in Africa and indeed in every corner of the world for millennia. Here in Africa, we are reminded daily of how unequally the bounties of globalization have been shared. There can be little hope for global peace and justice when hundreds of millions of Africans live in abject poverty, when a significant proportion of Africa remain in a state of disrepair, and when there is an untenable division of wealth and configuration of power within and among nations of the world. To achieve global peace and justice, we must commit ourselves to finding a way of ending the marginalization of Africa. Africa is known to be the birthplace of humankind and the cradle of civilization. Indeed, civilization in North Africa in general and Egypt in particular predates Greek civilization. The pyramids of Egypt stand aloft as testimony to that. Many scholars flock to the libraries of Alexandria, the most advanced of its time. Later on, civilizations such as the Songhai and Mali empires in West Africa, Ethiopian Empire in East Africa, and Zulu Empire in South Africa were to sprout up and flourish greatly in wealth and power across vast swathes of their respective regions. So where did it all go wrong? Where did it all go wrong? The period to which the finger is most often pointed is the many years for which the transatlantic slave trade lasted. Calculating the cost of slavery to Africa would tax the minds of the best academics. It must be remembered that it was the young and most able-bodied that were removed in hundreds of thousands from their homelands. The extent of artistic, cultural, and even technological advances that could have been made would never be known. Commenting on pre-colonial African society, the first president of the United States of America to address the African Union, Barack Obama, stated that Africa is the cradle of humanity, and ancient African kingdoms were home to great libraries and universities. But the evil of slavery took root not only abroad, but here on the continent. Colonialism skewed Africa's economy and robbed people of their capacity to shape their own destiny. The consequences of the carving up of Africa among mainly European states, often across traditional tribal lines, has been well documented. Though many of the colonists would claim to have left a rich legacy of good infrastructure and decent educational and health systems, when these are compared to the advances that were made in their respective home countries over the same period, this rich legacy pales into embarrassing insignificance. However, in Africa, we maintain the dream of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa as enshrined in the vision of the African Union. Our optimism, we hasten to add, is not due to promises made by President Barack Obama on his visit to Africa and address to the African Union, nor is it because of the promises made by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Theresa May, on her visit to Africa a few weeks ago. Rather, our optimism is based on the glad tidings given by the Khalifas of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the divinely guided successors to the promised Messiah of the latter days and holy founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, may peace be on him. In a message addressed to the peoples of African province, the second Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, may Allah be pleased with him, himself a profound visionary and great nation builder, he made the following remark. He said, and this is a long time ago, he said, "I'm reading the writing on the wall that there is a great future for your continent. God does not forsake a people for all time to come. The same opportunity to another nation and another continent. Now is your time in Africa. You have been oppressed and ruled by others for a very long time. Rest assured that your glorious time is fast approaching." The present Khalifa and worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, who himself lived and served this great country, Ghana, and continent for 8 years, has reiterated the same message of good cheer to Africa when addressing an African 50th anniversary Independence Day commemorative event held by the Pan-African Ahmadiyya Muslim Association, UK. He declared with impeccable confidence, "I firmly believe that the time is fast approaching for Africa to lead the world, To achieve this, however, he went on to say that Africans must strengthen their ties with God, make excellent plans to achieve higher levels of progress, develop an atmosphere of mutual love and affection, and uphold the human values of mankind." These themes, eloquently summarized by His Holiness, are epitomic of the beautiful tenets and teachings of Islam. They are not only pertinent to the realization of progress in Africa, but also pertinent to the achievement of global peace and justice. Islam, which literally means peace, has a lot to offer in the quest for peace and justice. We shall rely heavily on the teachings of Islam in our discourse today, for it is firm belief that Islam, the culmination of the evolutionary process of religion, contains in its fullness and perfection the divine guidance that can transport humankind from the depths of the earth to the loftiest stations of civilization. Africa made Islam its own from its very inception, when the African Christian king Negus of Abyssinia gave asylum to the persecuted followers of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That example of goodwill and benevolence points to the role religion can play in contributing to the renewal of African continent and indeed the world. According to Islam, the purpose of man's creation was to create a consciousness and ultimately to improve and enhance the quality of that consciousness, to its ultimate purpose of creation. That ultimate purpose was the creation of a conscious being of the highest order who would not only submit to the consummate beauty of God as reflected in his creation, but would also lead his fellow men to this ultimate goal. The object thus is to establish a balance and bring about accord in the relationship of man to his maker, the universe and his fellow men. Relationship of man to his maker, the universe and his fellow men. The realization and the shaping of one's life to this goal is, according to Islam, the ultimate wisdom and true source of peace. Just as a bird finds peace at its place of origin, that is its nest, so too the human heart finds true peace only by spiritually returning to its source of creation. This is the meaning of the Quranic verse, Allazina amanu wa tatma'innu qulubuhum bi zikrillah, ala bi zikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Those who believe and whose hearts find peace in the remembrance of Allah, because it is the one cannot attain peace, and without individual peace, peace in society cannot be built. As we make plans to achieve peace in society, so too must we endeavor to achieve higher levels of spiritual and moral progress essential for the promotion of peace and justice. This must begin with the creation of conditions in which human beings everywhere, and especially here in Africa, have the opportunity to create a better relationship with the Creator. For while external factors are important, but what is most important is that our concept of the progress of life and our obligations towards humankind should receive our attention all the time. And this must also be reflected in fulfilling the basic needs, material needs of the people. That would transform the societies and create a society that can lead to the love of God and lasting peace. Alongside newfound wealth, such as that from Africa's oil resources, hundreds of millions of Africans still endure extreme poverty. Alongside high-tech hubs of innovation, many Africans still reside in shanty towns, deprived of regular electricity or clean water supply. Africa's progress will depend on development that truly is a development which is addressing everyone for poverty and releasing everyone from poverty and leading them to prosperity. Africa's progress will depend on social and economic justice for all. The Holy Quran says, Inna Allaha ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. Verily, Allah enjoins justice and the doing of good to others. Commenting on this verse, our present beloved Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, he said, the root cause of the unrest in the world today is due to a lack of justice found at every level of society. Only by recognizing its creator can mankind hope to establish true justice and usher in an era of individual, communal, and global peace. Therefore, what is important is to understand that social justice ensures fair and just relations between the individual and society, enables the members of society to receive the basic benefits and enjoy social privileges like public health, public schools, public services, and social security. So these things are extremely important. Under Islamic social order, governments are reminded of the blessings of establishing a just and equitable social system where the underprivileged, unemployed, and poverty-stricken can have their fair share of the bounties of society. Before grief turns into protests, as we saw with the so-called Arab Spring, and before this threatens peace and order, the underlying symptoms must be removed so that there is no need for trade unions, pressure groups, industrial strife, or demonstrations. Simultaneously, Islam seeks to create an atmosphere of empathy where the demand for and insistence upon one's rights gives way to regard for the rights of others. With emphasis on human dignity, the level of consciousness and sensitivity to the suffering of fellow human beings is raised to a degree whereby citizens are concerned more about what they owe to their nation and fellow citizens rather than what is owed to them. Economic justice, an economy in which prosperity is joined with justice and builds the common good, is the professed objective of many a government. In reality, they fail to do justice to this golden principle. Differences in wealth and worldly possessions exist, and the contrast between the rich and the poor is nowhere as bitterly felt as it is felt in some of our societies. The Islamic philosophy of Zakah, which divine wisdom instituted for the redistribution of wealth, forms the bedrock of Islamic economic values. The Holy Prophet ﷺ described Zakah as a levy imposed upon the well-to-do, which is returned to the poorer sections of society. The Holy Quran states, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُعَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ فَرِيضَةٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. The alms are only for the poor and the needy, and for those employed in connection therewith, and for those whose hearts are to be reconciled, and for the freeing of slaves, and for those in debt, and for the cause of Allah, and for the wayfarer, an ordinance from Allah, and Allah is all-knowing. Zakah, alongside the prohibition of Islam, loans for exigencies, be they individual or intergovernmental, should be without interest according to Islam, as Allah loves beneficence towards the needy. Interest, on the other hand, is a leech that goes on sucking blood. Indeed, financing foreign debt on interest has been the scourge of African economies and stands diametrically opposed to the notion of economic justice. In shaping their economies, most governments concern themselves with the earning and not the spending of the members of society. Islam, however, not only tells individuals how to earn their daily bread, but also lays down moral and spiritual guidelines as to how to spend it. The prohibition, for instance, of expenditure on drinking and gambling, though not directly aimed at shaping the expenditure budget, are teachings which, if ignored, could be detrimental to society as a whole, and not just those indulging in these practices. There can be no talk of economic justice when the amount of money spent on alcohol in the United Kingdom on a Friday night alone is enough to feed the poverty-stricken communities of Africa for many months on end. A sizable portion of national wealth is flushed down the drain by such unhealthy pursuits, and this becomes an economic burden on society in terms of decreased productivity, healthcare costs, road accidents, crime prevention, and law enforcement. Honorable Chairperson, the eradication of poverty in all its guises and upholding the inherent dignity of all calls for investment in people. As Nelson Mandela observed, our most valued treasure is our people, especially our youth. It is our human resources that enable us to reap the benefits of all other assets. Our fight against poverty, crime, and all the maladies of our society requires us to invest in the development of our human resources. The immense potential of our people must be turned into specific skills and capacities needed for the reconstruction and development. No better investment can be made in people, and especially the youth, than a good education. An educated, enlightened, and informed population is the cornerstone of sustainable human development. Education will enable Africans to better serve the communities and countries on the road to prosperity. Education, in the words of Kwame Nkrumah, is the firmest foundation of all to any national building process. Education, in the words of Nelson Mandela, is the key towards realizing our vision of a better life for all. And education, in the words of Kofi Annan, is the premise of progress in every society, in every family. The holy founder of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, placed great emphasis on learning. He taught that a father gives his child nothing better than a good education. He famously instructed his followers to seek knowledge from cradle to the grave. He also said, a person who educates his daughters well is ensured a place in paradise. Acting upon this directive, the early Muslims embarked upon the pursuit of knowledge and learning, the blessings emanating from which were to inspire a great civilization in which Muslims and non-Muslims alike lived creative and useful lives, and which, by its achievements, enriched the whole world. Islam developed from among an unlettered people, far removed from the crossroads of civilization and human thought, to become the standard bearers of enlightenment in the then known world. It precipitated what is commonly referred to as the Golden Age of Islam, a period which ushered in immense contributions to philosophy, science, engineering, and governance. The development of that golden era, Muslim scientists brought both knowledge and application into inventions that remain central to modern life as we experience them today. Thus, education has an enormous power to transform. And while we speak of education here in Africa, we must highlight the importance of the education and empowerment of women. For all too often, women are excluded from education in many an African society. It was Barack Obama who said in his address to the African Union, the single best indicator of whether a nation will succeed is how it treats its women. Society as a whole stands to profit from the education of women. Let us remind ourselves of the well-known African proverb, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. This is an adage that I very much subscribe to. When women are educated, children do better at school, family more enlightened. We must empower women to take their full places as harbingers of enlightened nations and support the struggle for global peace and justice. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam guaranteed proximity to himself in paradise to the father who gave no preference to his son over his daughter in their upbringing. And when he declared under divine instructions that paradise lies under the feet of your mothers, he at once elevated the social status of women who at the time were oppressed, subjugated, and distributed as chattels of inheritance to unfathomable heights, and secured for them an equal share in the affairs of life. In our quest for global peace and justice, we must therefore recognize the social status of women and their rightful place in society as mothers, wives, and daughters. We must secure their rights in the guardianship of children, in the management of the affairs of the family, in inheritance, in divorce, and in education. For thus would peace and justice be established in the family, and by extension and on a firm basis, peace and justice established in society. In the traditional African society, women had a respectable and well-recognized role. Today, in the face of predominantly Western influences, African culture and tradition are indeed to be preserved with pride. As Patrice Lumumba, the Congolese independence leader, once observed, we have a culture all our own, unparalleled moral and artistic values, an art of living and patterns of life that are ours alone. All these African splendors must be jealously preserved and developed. And this is a great message that we have to remember even today. However, history shows that human moral horizons, we have come to realize, even in this postmodern era, that some traditions are good for us, but that others are steeped in ignorance. The march forward to global peace and justice for all necessitates the liquidation of ignorance and primitive practices. Social and economic justice in Africa cannot be achieved without a crusade against corruption, for nothing will unlock Africa's economic resurgence and reveal its true potential more than a permanent cure for the cancer of corruption. Recourse to bribery, inducement, and illicit financing undermines the dignity of people. The Holy Quran expressly forbids the giving or taking of bribes in the following terms: وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَّامِ لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And do not devour your wealth among yourselves through falsehood, and offer it not as bribe to the authorities, that you may knowingly devour a part of the wealth of other people with injustice. There is nothing inherent in indigenous African culture that predisposes Africans to corruption. Yet corruption has become a serious malady and the accepted norm. Africa must now put an end to this cycle of corruption. Africa must promote good governance, transparency, and rule of law in all affairs if it is to emerge as a people conscious of its responsibilities to itself, to future generations, and to the world we live in. That requires more than a change of technocratic policy. Ultimately, the most powerful antidote to established ways is the new generation of African youth. As the second Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community once notably remarked, a nation cannot be reformed without first reforming its youth. We must reform our youth so that they stand ever upright, resolute, and determined to reinforce righteousness and to defend the dignity of Africa and make Africa the continent of the 21st century. Therefore, we believe on reasonable grounds that Africans are capable of providing leadership that is altruistic and not self-serving for its own aggrandizement. Leadership that prizes highly integrity, honesty, and respect for the inherent dignity of all. But for this, piety, righteousness, belief in life after death, and accountability therein, as advocated by Islam, are prerequisites. In this regard, the Holy Prophet ﷺ set a very high precedent as head of state. As Islam spread through Arabia, he would frequently receive large quantities of goods and money, which he would immediately distribute among the poor and needy without keeping anything for himself or family. This example demonstrates that it is incumbent upon those in authority to show sensitivity to the cause of the people to the extent that there is no need to form pressure groups and unions. His unique example, the unique example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was emulated by his illustrious successors, the Khalifas, who were known to have traversed the land incognito to ascertain the welfare of the needy and make provisions for them accordingly. While it is neither expected nor even possible for modern-day leaders to physically emulate this example, yet both in spirit and attitude, this remains an excellent model. This is the spirit and attitude which must be adopted by the new generation of African leaders so that they become the embodiment of impeccable integrity and selfless service in public life. Likewise, government should constantly be on the lookout lest there be a section of society deprived of fundamental economic rights, equal access to opportunities, or to the basic requirements of life. In a special message addressed for the landmark Africa Peace Symposium held by the Pan-African Ahmadiyya Muslim Association UK in London last year, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, made the following remark. He said, all people should play their respective roles in helping light the torch for a bright and that you maintain a spirit of peace and brotherhood with your nations and with your African neighbors. And in this way, Africa can set a glorious example of peace for the rest of the world to follow. Islam as a religion emphasizes the spirit of mutual love and affection at every turn. This concept permeates every section of the Islamic social edifice and seeks to establish an egalitarian society based on the practical expression of the truth that all humans are creatures of the same God and must, for His sake, live together as one. Islam also enjoins absolute justice to friend and foe alike and concedes no privilege on account of birth, social status, family ties, tribal affiliations, or indeed any other factor. True nobility, according to the Holy Quran, proceeds from righteousness and righteousness alone. Allah says, O mankind, we have created you from male and female, and we have made you into clans and tribes that you may recognize one another. Verily, the most honorable Allah, clan, tribe, office, and status, so that man may unite and promote global peace and justice. The Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, emphatically declared in his farewell sermon that it is the promotion of this concept of equality of mankind that can inspire a righteous people, a cohesive society, and ultimately a peaceful and just world. This is exactly what was witnessed at the birth of Islam, when the darkness of the Arabian Peninsula was dispelled by the light of Islam. It was the acceptance of Islam that transformed the lives of the Arabs, who were idolatrous, unruly, bitterly divided into warring factions, and given to the mad pursuit of pleasure, into virtue and righteousness. It was the acceptance of Islam that united them in love for each other and love for their Creator. Speaking of unity, Africa is, of course, no monolithic body. It is made of a vast diversity of nations, tribes, and cultures. Many on the continent and in the diaspora have aspired towards African unity. Indeed, many prominent African leaders have crusaded for African unity. Who can forget the iconic speech of Kwame Nkrumah in 1963 on the subject of African unity at the inaugural ceremony of the Organization of African Unity? He said, we all want a united Africa, united not only in our concept of what unity can connote, but united in our common desire to move forward together and dealing with all the problems that can best be solved only on a continental basis. The same clarion call was repeated by Julius of Accra in 1997 when, in an address on African unity, he said, "So this is my plea to the new generation of African leaders and African peoples. Work for unity with the firm conviction that without unity, there is no future for Africa. Unity will not make us rich, but it can make it difficult for Africa and the African people to be disregarded and humiliated. Unity is indeed a key ingredient to achieving socio-economic peace and justice. Unity is indispensable to progress and prosperity. Secular Pan-Africanism, originating from the belief that African countries share common problems, common solutions, and common destinies, will remain a dream unless Africans find a way of transcending divisions imposed upon them to unite upon a common ground. The Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, summed it up with insight and percipience when he declared, "I firmly believe that if the African countries and peoples unite together and fulfill the requirements of justice, then one day, Africa will emerge as a true global power." Africa always celebrated hope. Hope must now become reality. This begins with a deep-seated appreciation of difference and diversity as constituent parts of unity. While we acknowledge the differences among Africans, and indeed in mankind, we should equally recognize that it is those very differences that enrich our human interactions in all spheres of life, be they social, cultural, linguistic, or indeed religious. We should value our diversity, yet seek unity within that diversity. We should unite on the basis of ethical values and moral principles, placing our humanity above our heterogeneity and our universality above our diversity. Most importantly, however, we should unite on the basis of our relationship with one another through our God, and as a practical expression of the truth that all men are creatures and servants of the same benevolent God. Therefore, it is important, and this must be emphasized, that Islam, when practiced in its pure and pristine form, as demonstrated by the members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, can play a catalytic role in achieving global peace and justice on the basis of its direct correlation with the establishment of a peaceful society, the eradication of poverty in all its manifestations, promoting democratic governance, absolute morality, good neighborliness, and above all, true universal brotherhood. True universal brotherhood in which man develops sensibility and sensitivity to the pain and suffering of others can be established only by virtue of our relationship with one another through our God. Common interests, pursuits, and occupations can engender friendship and brotherhood, but it is the loyal and faithful relationship with God that can ensure everlasting unity here and in the hereafter. It is only the cognizance that humans are all equally creatures of the same benevolent God, and that they must constantly seek His pleasure through the meticulous discharge of both rights due to Him and the rights due to His creation, that can bring about the realization of true universal brotherhood, which can guard against friction and conflict and stand the test of all the contingencies to which life is subject. As observed by His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the divinely guided Khalifa of the time, Africans must uphold the human values of mankind. If Africa is to realize its greatness, this calls for a vision informed by the ideas and ideals of altruistic, decent, and peace-loving people on the African continent. This calls for the building of a united Africa based on the human values of dignity, equality, and freedom, and with a better life and inalienable rights for all people across all racial, cultural, ideological, geographical, ethnic, religious, and class lines at the heart of its mission. This calls for the promotion of a value system founded in the service of humanity and inspired by the love of God, a commitment to forgiveness and reconciliation over revenge and retribution, opposition to injustice, discrimination and oppression in favor of righteousness, inclusiveness and liberty, upholding probity, integrity, and uprightness, whilst rejecting all forms of corruption that leads to civil strife, instability, institutional breakdown, and ultimately to the implosion of the state. A commitment to human values that allow a variety of cultures, races, religions, and languages to form the total richness that can turn the African continent into the powerful engine for development it has the potential to be. A commitment to human values which engender respect for and sensitivity to the things others hold dear would be a tremendous contribution to the kind of future we want to bequeath posterity, especially at a time when religious fundamentalism and fanaticism of all kinds threaten to destroy global peace and harmony. Africa has not been immune to religious extremism. Militant groups such as Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, and the Lord's Resistance Army have wreaked havoc in many parts of the continent. To combat radicalization and extremist groups, our political leaders must also begin to approach issue of manufacture and sale of weapons with circumspection. Terrorist groups will be rendered impotent if the supply of weapons is cut off to them. More importantly, however, we must cut off the root cause of their human. Masroor Ahmed, in his message to the African Peace Symposium in London last year, and in message today which was read to us, he said at that time, and I quote, "Tragically, in recent years, some extremist and terrorist groups such as Boko Haram or Al-Shabaab have gained influence in Africa. To eradicate them and to bring an end to their evil, both the African leaders and the people must work together to ensure that their countries develop and progress. In all dealings, you must show integrity and be just so that young people do not become frustrated, as it is frustration that invariably makes people vulnerable to radicalization. Thus, the imperatives of development, poverty reduction, and promotion of economic development require us to pursue for all of Africa integrated and sustainable objectives of economic growth and equity, fiscal discipline, human resource development, and importantly, open and transparent government. We must succeed in these matters if we are to meet the most urgent challenges. We must ensure that economic growth translates into increased employment, that investment in the continent matches the favorable conditions that now exist, and that trade relations with the rest of the world are put on an equitable basis. A few decades ago, these words would have been visionary, but this is the age in which science has transcended the limits of the material world and technology has invaded the heart of nature. The phenomenon of globalization and the relationship of nations on the continent mean that African countries have increasingly greater bargaining power and more choices these days. During the recent visit of France's President Macron, the President of Ghana very, very wisely said and very articulately called on all Africans to get away from the mindset of dependence, a mindset contingent on aid and charity. In a speech, the video of which went viral around the world, President Nana Akufo-Addo said, "We can no longer continue to make policy for ourselves in our country, in our region, in our continent, on the basis of whatever support that the Western world or France or the European Union can give us. It will not work. It has not worked, and it will not work. Our responsibility is to charter a path which is about how we can develop our nations ourselves. It is not right for a country like Ghana, 60 years after independence, to still have its health and education budgets being financed on the basis of the generosity and charity of European taxpayers. It was a speech that was described as probably the most powerful message in recent times coming from an African leader. Africa's effort to build open democracies, respect human rights, and uphold human values, to improve efficiency and implement sustainable policies will be a resounding voice which compels all to listen to this message. It is my hope and prayer that this strong call is answered by all the third world countries. In conclusion, let me quote Nelson Mandela once more. He said, "In the history of nations, generations have made their mark through their acumen to appreciate critical turning points and with determination and creativity to seize the moment. This is the moment. This is our moment, the moment of Africa. The moment of Africa. We must maintain an abiding faith in our capacity to live in peace and to seek justice and a better way of life for all. We must, seizing the moment in our quest for global peace and justice and for a brighter future for the continent of Africa, leave no stone unturned in our endeavor to transcend man-made differences and bring harmony where there is discord, brotherhood where there is enmity, and unity where there is division. The day may yet dawn when the fear of God, love for one's fellow men, respect for justice, and aptitude for peace will enable posterity to march forth earnestly and triumphantly to a glorious new era in which humankind would learn to use the fruits of our universality, our diversity, and our humanity for the promotion of global peace and justice. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community in this country, in this continent, and the rest of the world is striving passionately to unite the world for justice and peace in the name of our Creator, God Almighty. The head of the community, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, has traveled all over to address the leaders, parliamentarians, politicians, and heads of status to follow the path of lasting justice, peace, and prosperity. For this, we must take every opportunity to advance the cause and welfare of Africa. We must take every opportunity to relieve the poverty and suffering of those affected. We must, in the service of God and His creation, take every opportunity to sustain our determination and our courage, to renew our fervor and our dedication to nourish our spirits and into a glowing reality. May Allah so ordain and bless us all profoundly. Ameen. Ghana, the great country. Ghana, the great country. Live long, live long. May Allah bless you all, enable us to do the right things for our people, for posterity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, His Excellency, Dr. Iftikhar Ayaz. Thank you for your wonderful speech. We are so very grateful to each one of you for your patience and for your time. May God richly bless you. We indeed have come to the end of the program, and at this juncture, we will invite the Amir and missionary in charge to lead us in a closing prayer to formally bring this very first edition of Ahmadiyya Peace Conference in Africa to a glorious end. Thank you very much, and may God richly bless you.
Alhamdulillah, we've come to the end of the function. And it's time now for us to turn our attention to our Creator, the Almighty Allah, to supplicate, to pray. We will be engaging in a silent prayer, in the course of which I expect each and every one of us to pray that the Almighty Allah should see each and every one of us back to our homes, take us back to our homes and into the loving arms of our dear ones. Let's pray for peace in the world, peace in our continent, and peace in Ghana. Let us pray that the stereotypes which lead us into religious disturbances, cultural disturbances, political disturbances, societal disturbances in general, that may the good Almighty Allah remove those stereotypes from within our midst so that we can come to realize peace in our various societies. For us in Ghana in particular, and from me as the Amir of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community of Ghana, I wish that we pray fervently that by this time next year, the monster called vigilantism is completely uprooted from the Ghanaian society. Vigilantism is chaos. Vigilantism means hatred. Vigilantism is devilish. Vigilantism is an enemy of peace and progress. Vigilantism does not belong to Ghana. When we hear of guerrilla warfarers, and indeed we are talking of disgruntled vigilantes who group together into the forest and cause havoc, mayhem, and destabilize communities. And the very first enemy of vigilantism is the very person who gives birth to vigilantism. Because it is when they get disgruntled with the one who brought them forth that he's the very first person they jump onto and finally bring about destruction of society. Let us therefore pray that vigilantism and all its associates are completely dismantled from this beautiful motherland of ours called Ghana. Let us pray. Please. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ameen. And thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. As you are leaving, we have a light refreshment. Please just have something, take a bite before.